3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. My name is Barry Canty, SVP Marketing here at ibex, and I'm happy to have you with us for today's webinar, which is titled Top 11 Trends for CX in 2024. I want to kick it off with an interesting fact from Forrester. According to Forrester, 42% of AI decision makers identified improving or personalizing CX as a top use case for the technology. So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about what the team at ibex believes to be the top AI trends for the coming year. I'm really excited to have two members of the ibex team. Our global heads of sales will be presenting today. First up is Mike Hallowell. How's it going, Mike?
Hey, it's going well. So excited to be here. Welcome to the ibex Nation, to all our friends online.
Great to have you. And then next up is John Thompson. Hey, John.
Good to see you, Barry. Great to be back. Mike, great to see you.
Good. And before we jump in, for those of you who have not been on an ibex webinar before, just a little background on who we are. We're a tech-driven BPO working with some of the world's top brands across multiple verticals. We operate a network of 31 contact centers with a team of over 34,000 CX professionals. A few housekeeping items before we jump in. We did get some great questions during registration, but we encourage you to submit questions while we're having this conversation. We'll get to as many as we have time for. We'll respond to some on camera. Some will be responded to via text. Thank you for those who did submit questions. We'll respond to those if we have time. And just a reminder that the recording of this webinar will be shared with every registrant. You can view it again. You can share it with your colleagues, whatever you think is necessary. All right, gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump into this first trend. So trend number one, widespread GenAI integration. According to Gartner, over 80% of enterprises will have used GenAI by 2026. So Mr. Hallowell, I'll come to you first for this one. What are your thoughts on the prediction of widespread GenAI integration?
Well, 2026 is still a bit a ways. And I have to think that 80% of enterprises having used some type of generative AI, that's not so mind-blowing. It's how they use it and how deep it gets embedded into their CX space, where they're actually communicating and connecting with their customers and prospects. You know, think about the migration that companies took from on-premise technology solutions to cloud. There are still major global corporate entities out there that are still utilizing old on-premise environments. And so I think that journey is going to take a whole lot longer than 2026 to get 80% of them there. However, utilizing some type of AI in the short term, absolutely. It's going to become part of everyone's business acumen.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the 80% by 2026 is a lock. I mean, I think to Mike's point, how organizations implement it, where they put it in, and what that means is probably what's more into question. Because I think they'll have used it, but have they used it appropriately? Where in their organizations are they utilizing it? I think that's probably more into question. And then what the adoption rate is and how they measure success.
Yeah, what's interesting about the Gartner stat is it does not reference CX specifically. So if either of you had to predict the percentage of penetration with GenAI from a CX perspective, what do you think?
I'd go less than 50%. I mean, because here's the thing, like, I think organizations are still going to figure out who funds it. And as we know, CX organizations battle funding already. So is the enterprise going to fund that for everywhere? And then is the CX organization part of that? Or is the CX organization going to have to fight for funding for that? I think there's some questions marks as you get to that. So less than
Sure.
50.
And there's the whole control element, right? Who controls the data that's utilized in that artificial intelligence use case, and how do they control it from a legal perspective? I think you're going to see a lot more limitations there, and again, probably more focused than on supportive artificial intelligence as opposed to direct non-live agent integration.
Great. Well, agreed. All right, let's jump to trend number two. Trend number two is hyper personalization. So we all are aware of sort of standard personalization that references data points such as username or location. I'll come to you first, John, for this one. How do you see brands leveraging hyper personalization from a CX perspective?
Yeah, I think it's actually a huge opportunity with AI, to be honest. Hyper personalization, I think, is, if we're going to rate the trends, is going to be in my top 5. And here's why. You look at financial institutions have long used hyper personalization through credit cards. Think about these custom co-branded cards that you can go get printed anytime you want with whatever types of logos they are having these partnerships with. So now think about AI. And think about the organizations that are maybe identifying their brand. And let's say that they sign a sponsorship deal with Taylor Swift for other parts of their business. And Taylor Swift now can be part of their personalization into the AI in the contact center. That to me is because maybe their brand is connected to that singer or whoever, and they know the buyer is doing that, and they can select to be Swifty, if you want, or Taylor Swifted in their AI organization, or how the consumer, interacts with their organization through AI. I think that is just a fun example because she's a fun topic to talk about. But I think hyper-personalization and how that connects to the brand, utilizing AI, is an untapped opportunity that CX organizations in the past really haven't been able to utilize, but other parts of their business have. That's my point of view.
Really, JT, we couldn't get to question number 2 without a Taylor Swift reference.
I promised with my LinkedIn stuff, I had to at least get it or go on one, Mike, but yes.
Well, look, I truly do agree with hyper personalization. It's going to become exponential. I have 2 friends. One's named Siri and the other Alexa. And they seem to know more about me than my own family. Frighteningly, they make suggestions of what I should buy, of what music I should listen to, and and what books I should read, what TV shows I should watch. So clearly, the amount of data that's there is becoming exponential, and its ability to be hyper focused on the things that are important to me as a consumer, and how it manipulates that data, manipulates every time I make a suggestion or say something or do an online search, and pulls that back sometime later, looks at my purchasing habits online and makes those types of suggestions. It's absolutely going to become frighteningly predictive. And I think, from a supplier standpoint, from those of us who are governing that, I think it's in our interest, as the sellers, to consumers, to ensure that we're protecting that to some extent, and carefully riding that fine line.
No, that's a good point. And to our viewers, if you have any questions or concerns around this topic of personalization and what your brand is thinking about in terms of how to safely leverage it while respecting a person's privacy, please feel free to drop comments and send us questions, and we'll get back to the topic if we have time. All right, guys, let's jump to trend number 3. And this is an interesting one. It's bot manipulation. So this is the manipulation of chatbots by users. I think working in the CX space, we can appreciate the desire that many consumers have around interacting with a human as opposed to interacting with the chatbot. There was a recent study of 35,000 respondents, and 1 out of 5 gave them a 66% satisfaction rating when it comes to chatbots. So guys, and Mike, I'll come back to you for this one. What are your thoughts around the rising trend of bot manipulation?
Well, first, let's put credence on the data. If there were 66% that provided a less than satisfied, then there's still a third of those that are working well, that they're getting high ratings. It's a work in progress, and we all become increasingly, as consumers, frustrated when we don't get the answer we want quickly enough. So I think the answer to that is finding the right balance of providing the easy, quick answers that I as a consumer want immediately, that I don't want an escalation to a live agent, that I want to gather that information and move on, versus the complex, that the likelihood of the bot answering my question correctly and completely is a low probability. And I think that's where you're getting those dissatisfied ratings, is from those who are getting either an incomplete answer or just the wrong answer and asking that question twice. And look, again, we've all got frustrated in those situations where we don't get the answer that we're looking for, or we get a wrong answer. What do you think, JT?
I'm not a big math guy, so I have another stat. It's really easy stat to like process. 100% of babies born today won't know a world without AI. And so if you think about that, they're going to be trained to manipulate bots to get to what they want. Similar to how a lot of us have been trained to work within the IVR ecosystem to get to where we want, right? And I don't think that's going to be any different in terms of when you get to, if the bot's not giving you the answer you want, then how do you manipulate the bot to A, give you the answer, or B, get to a place where you can get the answer? And I think that's not going to change. It is how organizations decide to evolve their bots to prevent kind of bot spamming, or where that goes. I think that's going to be kind of an interesting trend in how organizations continue to evolve that. But I think bot manipulation is going to be, a thing to stay, as long as it's a trend, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we actually have an audience question that's come in. So let's take a little pause from our trends here and respond. Yeah. The question is, with Gen AI being adopted widely across the industry, how will BPOs differentiate themselves? And what should brands look for in their BPOs? Mike, I'll come to you first with this one.
Well, look, BPO differentiation has always been subtle cultural ability to point to uniqueness. When we're talking about the utilization of people, it's about hiring the right people, putting in the right processes, giving them the right training, retaining them in the right way, and rewarding them. The artificial intelligence element should be no different. It's about how we plan it, how we execute, how we tweak, how we get better and learn and develop a repeatable and highly correct environment. So I think it's differentiation is going to take some time, because we've got to go beyond just some of the numbers, and we've got to get to the emotional side of the why and how it's really augmentation, not artificial intelligence.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Any thoughts, John?
Yeah, and I don't want to give away one of the trends that's coming up, but I think you look at it in two perspectives. One is, I think we're going to be asked to have a point of view on this subject. And that point of view comes from us being experts in this space. I think the way the BPO industry has evolved since its inception is now clients and our prospects are looking to us as being experts, understanding multiple vertical segments, multiple geographies, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to ask for us to have a point of view, right? That's number one. Number two is they are going to be looking not only for us for that, but how are we leveraging these tools to improve our agent workflows, their ability for agents to be more efficient. And I know And that's a teaser for a future. But I think that's the two, I would say, Barry.
Great, great. All right, thank you so much for the question, and please continue submitting them, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, guys, let's jump to trend number 4. Trend number 4 is the implementation of AI trust, risk, and security management protocols. Interesting stat from Gartner. AI trust, risk, and security management will increase the accuracy of decision-making by eliminating up to 80% of inaccurate information. John, I'll come to you for a response to this trend around AI trust, risk, and security management protocols.
Yeah, I think if the organizations have the right data in place for AI to make data-driven decisions, then you really eliminate some of that risk. Now, that's the big caveat is there front-end data that's going to enable the right decision making that then eliminates kind of human error along the way? That I think is still probably the big question mark. But I think if all of those things are in place, absolutely.
Yeah, this was really interesting because I think it's what will make or break artificial intelligence. It's the integrity of the data that we're using. And so if an organization chooses to maintain and surround its own data set and not allow the rest of the world to infiltrate and to potentially marginalize the accuracy, that's critical. But then the flip side of that is it's limiting to some extent the ability for that artificial intelligence to grow and become smarter is dependent on the level of data and the amount of data that's in the bucket, so to speak. So I think therein lies that same challenge that we've always seen. If I go back to an old school knowledge base system, there was always a governor. There was someone who was reviewing and a quality assurance check before we allowed that answer to sit in our knowledge base. We really have to use some type of process to do the same thing. Otherwise, we'll fall into the same traps.
Yeah, I love the knowledge base example, Mike. I think that's really salient point.
That's great. Thanks. Okay, let's go on to trend number 5. And this is one that I think really falls in line with ibex from a cultural standpoint. And trend number 5 is the AI optimized agent lifecycle. AI is already being leveraged to analyze and enhance every stage of the agent experience. We've been doing it at ibex for quite a few years. Mike, what are your thoughts on the AI optimized agent lifecycle?
It's working. So in a nutshell, it is working. If you really think about the process from a user standpoint, right? From an agent standpoint who's being hired by a contact center, every element of the process utilizes AI and helps that agent feel like they've just made the greatest decision in their life. In this case, to work for a company like ibex. And so it's the social engagement, it's the help and support, it's the connection with the other individuals that they've been hired with that are going to be their peers. We work in an environment now where, sad to say, but the majority of our workforce is remote. Perhaps not in the contact center, but as we see across the board, more and more, and it varies by geo. And so to feel that sense of connection is critical to maintaining that agent. So if I can connect them with the right peers and individuals, they create that same type of team camaraderie. That's important. That's what will retain an agent beyond the challenges that they'll have. If I can introduce them to their team leader, to their trainer, to their quality assurance person, all before they begin their journey here, that just reinforces that they made a great decision and creates that type of culture that we know drives long-term retention.
What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I mean, I love, Barry, how you let it off, because I just feel like that's the DNA of ibex as a company. And I look at it from agent grind. I like to use the word agent grind, right? The agent grind to me is the parts of the job that whether it is in the life cycle where it's, give one example, trying to get a job and how hard it is for you to get through all of the red tape, if you will, to get to the interview. So how do we implement AI to make that interaction or that experience for a potential future employee easier in the first time they engage with us? Because I think that's typically where they start to assess, is this a company I want to work for? Right? That's number one. Now let's build that back to later on in their life cycle and how you implement tools that are going to make their life easier in their day-to-day workflows. And so again, I feel like I'm like teasing the next trend, not intentionally, but I just think that's what's really important, right? Like I look at it, like attrition is our enemy in what we do. So if we can smartly put in AI tools that reduce the grind, that equal the attrition, then AI is absolutely optimizing that life cycle.
Thanks, JT. And to your point about needing to potentially tease some of these trends, I think it speaks to the connectedness of some of these AI use cases when it comes to CX and the contact center. So feel free to still the thunder of the next trend if necessary, and we'll dive into it a little bit later as we go.
Yeah.
So with that, let's jump into trend number 6, which is AI for real-time agent assistance. And we're seeing on the ibex side a rise in what is often referred to as the Augmented-Connected Workforce, which is CX technology that's embedded into the agent workflow. So Mike, I'll come to you for this one. When you think about how AI is being leveraged for agent assistance, can you speak to our viewers about that?
I think at its most basic example, it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. And I think the way that we as a BPO and contact center vertical continue to grow is the integrated use of technology and information to drive the agents to the information they need to be subject matter experts to their customers, right? And so it's not about a replace, although there are instances on simplistic interactions that we can replace human, but it's augmenting, it's giving them data, it's live and active listening of the conversation between the consumer and their agent to make natural progressions to next steps, especially in areas where it's tech support or sales, those that have a progression to the process of the call and of the integration. So I think it goes so far beyond. And what will that do over time? That will create an environment where our skill set will increase because we have these great tools, and our agents will now move up in the hierarchy and the challenge of the call types that they're supporting, because perhaps some of these easier ones can be handled 100% in an augmented or artificial environment. So I'm excited to see the progression of that and the positives that it brings our industry.
What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I mean, a couple weeks back, I was at a conference where we spoke about, in a roundtable about AI, and a great quote came out of this. AI won't replace humans, it will enable them. I love that quote. Like, it just, and I think because there's a lot of scary, like, oh, this is going to be really scary, people are going to lose their jobs. That's like where people immediately go, is like the deepest, darkest place. I think this is where, to what we've been talking about as a theme of these trends, is how does AI make people's lives easier from their work standpoint? And then they're a bit more focused on meaningful tasks versus just task-oriented to be task-oriented. And as we know, especially in the agent life cycle or how they interact, a lot of that time is spent hunting for information or after call work or things that aren't really focused on delighting the customer. So if we can plug in tools that allow for them to be really good at what the meaningful interaction is, then AI is doing a great thing in terms of augmenting and connecting the workforce, but allowing them to be focused and intentional in what they're doing. That would be my view on that.
And JT, go back to the previous question when we talk about developing the agent and giving them a sense of belonging. Boy, when they're making that kind of a connection and handling more complex challenges and doing it in a single interaction, now they have truly delighted a customer. That makes them feel secure, strong, proud, and engaged with the mission that they're there to solve. And I think that's going to be what really separates our industry and gives our agents such a lift.
Yeah, I agree, because I think about it, like they drive satisfaction a lot of times by solving the customer's challenge on this interaction. And so if we can make that easier, Mike, to your point, then success.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we've spoken a lot on previous webinars about the positive influence on a good employee experience on the customer experience. And I think at ibex, we'll definitely be focused on leveraging AI to improve that employee experience. So we've had a question come in that I want to pause and respond to. You guys sort of referenced it indirectly. It is a common question that we're hearing around the BPO industry. So I think taking a pause to respond to it, I think it'll be a good use of our time. So here's the question. You're not going to be surprised. Do you predict that GenAI will reduce the number of agents that brands will need for customer support? Mike, John, feel free to jump on that one.
That's controversial. Okay, here's how I look at it. I think it's not going to be all one size fits all. For some organizations, yes, it will 100% do that. I think for some organizations, over time, it could, but I go back to moment of truth interactions, complexities, and where you're plugging in AI, as we just talked about, to agent assisted to make them more efficient, right? But I think it's very easy. The very easy answer that everyone could just easily say is, yep, it 100% will. And I don't think that's a controversial answer. I think the more controversial answer is, yeah, but not for everybody. Because I just don't believe that is a universal truth. But Mike, I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, I suspect that the companies that fall into that category where the answer is a resounding yes are those that perhaps are still immature in their customer engagement strategy, and we're probably pecking low fruit off the tree that otherwise perhaps would have been handled in different non-AI related tools, whether it's an IVR or agent assisted chat or plain old fashioned Q&A. So yes, in those cases, but the mature well developed CX brands are going to now look at those and simply move the box upstream, such that the questions that the agents are supporting are now of a higher complexity, more those that require more empathetic engagement that you would never trust to a delivered non-personalized response. And if I think about many of our industries, especially healthcare, right, we need that level of empathy. We need that level of trust and understanding to build the rapport with our member, with our patient in that case. And I don't see that as having that same level of impact.
All right. No, thanks for responding. And please, for those of you watching, if you have any additional questions on this topic, shoot us a message via the chat tool there, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Our next trend number 7, is the rise of machine customers. Fun fact from Gartner, they anticipate 100 million requests for customer service will be raised by machine customers by 2024. And by 2026, 20% of inbound customer service contact volume will come from machine customers. So Mike, I'll come to you first. If you can give our viewers a definition of a machine customer, and then your thoughts on this as a rising trend.
Well, at its most basic level, a machine customer, in my view, is my own bot that's anticipating and recognizing my challenges and proactively trying to solve for those in lieu of me now reaching out. So it's bringing that information and that answer to me. And boy, if I could hire one of those to create my holiday shopping list for my family, to anticipate the mechanical challenges that I have, whether it's with my computer or cell phone, boy, that would be a beautiful thing. Sign me up. I want one. But I do see that as the natural progression, right? And my fear is, of course, now those two AI bots have their own conversation and they forget about the people that they're serving. But if we intend to develop it in such a way that they're learning from each other and it still includes the human element, and we don't go off the rails on a bot to bot environment, I think that is a natural progression in helping solve problems for us as consumers in anticipating what they may be. So whether it's the bot reaching out or the organization realizing and understanding challenges that I'm having, perhaps navigating through their website, providing an application online, then that proactive integration and that proactive outreach, I think, is a really well meaningful and well-deserved enhancement.
It's interesting on this one. I think the timeline for this is probably a little bit further out for like it being actively engaged by most consumers. But here's two things that come to mind. One is my 17-year-old daughter's ability to program AI virtual assistant in her school. And she successfully got, going back to bot spamming, this virtual assistant to, I won't name the organization, to give us a number of free coupons for cheeseburgers. And I appreciate my daughter doing that because I love cheeseburgers. However, it presents a real risk too. And this is one that really is how are organizations going to deal with this from a risk level is, if you have a bot that's doing that, how do you discern whether they're actually the customer? How do you authenticate that? How do you not, if you can read about, there's a lot of fears within some of these organizations about, illegal or like groups of people doing illegally trying to get in and get customers' information from a call center because they are acting as the customer, and the back-end call center is not able to interpret that engagement. I think there's a lot of risk and concern with that, and something probably from a trend on the back end that we in the CX space are going to have to solve for future problems that are kind of here and now.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, guys. And to our viewers, if you have any additional thoughts on machine customers and what you're seeing in your world, please feel free to drop us a note here in the chat. All right, let's go to trend number 8, which is very much a change of gears. This is emotion AI. And emotion AI detects and interprets human emotional signals by analyzing voice and text. So JT, Mike, I'm not sure I'm going to for this one, but whoever wants to jump on it, what are your thoughts on emotion AI?
I'll second that emotion. I could sing it if Mike, you can sing it. I'll lean on you on that one. But I think this goes into that personalization trend. There's a connected tissue to that, Barry, which is how does AI kind of capture whether a customer is frustrated, where they're at in their cycle of, did they do a bunch of research on the front end? Now they're engaging this bot and they're really frustrated and they want to get out. And how do you spam out? And then the AI is capturing kind of some key ways of trends or behaviors of the customer to then interact to kind of tone down the emotion of the customer, interpret that, or maybe even grab that interpretation. And if it does reach an agent, to deliver that to the agent, hey, this customer is very frustrated. So then the agent deals with a different level of empathy in that moment of truth engagement. I think there's a lot of real opportunity here that's really positive for our space and how we can, going back to Mike, what you and I were talking about, the ultimate goal to delight a customer.
Yeah, look, there's so many products already on the market that are doing real-time analysis of sentiment, right? Not just now. We used to listen to those calls after the fact, and we could analyze sentiment changes and frustration. Now it's real time. It's happening live while the call is taking place, whether that interaction is customer to bot or customer to augmented agent, as we've used that phrase before, and finding those challenges, especially so to your point, in bot to customer, move that to a live agent, educate that agent very quickly on where the challenge is, and diffuse the situation. If it's already in a live agent environment, and we see that tension rising or that frustration, doesn't necessarily need to be solely on the customer. The frustration could be the agent not being able to identify and find the answers that they're seeking. And there's a great opportunity now for artificial intelligence and gaining some support to quickly drive potential answers to the agent to then carefully and in a diffusing way share those with the customer. And I think that's the beauty of how we can use this effectively and create delightful experiences.
Yeah.
All right. We're 8 trends down, 3 more to go. Let's go ahead and jump into trend number 9. And trend number 9 is predictive AI. And this is predictive AI to predict future customer behaviors or trends. Mike, I'll come to you for this one.
Well, again, I'll go back to my girlfriend Siri and Alexa. They are already predicting what I'm going to listen to, what I'm going to read, watch, write, and purchase. It's become so evident and so part of our lives now that when that technology first began to manifest itself, we all believed that that they were listening to us 24/7 and that they were creating these this spying element. It's become a part of our lives now that we almost rely on it at cases to predict what our needs are, to predict when we're running out of a product and want to reorder and making that suggestion for us. So it's a dangerous play. I think the intent is great, but sometimes the hidden sentiment of it is a little bit too evasive and it can backfire at times. Perhaps we want to err on the side of lighter suggestions as opposed to the more heavy ones. And I think that's where there's some balance and some tweaking that needs to be done over time.
Yeah, I mean, of all the trends we have, I think this is the one that I know we're not ranking them, but this is number one, right? And it really is, because it is, if you look at if you're sitting at the very top of any organization, how do you justify any AI investment? This is where you can point to. And it doesn't matter if you're in the CX organization or Barry in a marketing organization, right? How do you drive predictive analytics patterns in consumer behavior, whether that is as it relates to why customers buy things and the cadence in which they purchase them, to why are they calling in? What are the top call drivers? How do you take that out? How do you better reallocate to complex call types? And then how do you take those and get those out? Like, I think that this data then allows you to try to predict the motions of your business. And I just, that's where I feel like that's like the starting point of this. And then to me, that's the foundation. All these other trends that we've been discussing kind of filter down off of that. That's kind of the view I have on that.
No, that's a great point.
Thinking about traditional call centers and what is an outsourced call center, one of the main value propositions is that we drive a more efficient environment, right? And we have analytics and people behind analyzing data in order to help us make those decisions. But imagine the lift that we'll have in anticipating or reacting to, perhaps not anticipating, but reacting to the unexpected call volume, and how our artificial intelligence begins to tell us that information sooner and more accurately than we ever could in the past. I think of the detection products that we have for weather and earthquakes, and how they've become more accurate over the years in getting early detection to drive actions and reactions. The ability to do that in our space will drive unbelievable efficiencies in aligning the right resources to the right needs in the future. And I'm excited about that. I think that's where the efficiency gain is for contact centers.
Got it. So for those of you watching, John's thoughts or predictive AI would be his number one if we were to rank these. Let us know what your number one would be. Even if it's not been discussed, we're just curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Barry, even if it's you want to use AI for cheeseburgers, come on.
Exactly. All right, guys, let's jump into trend number 10, which is improvements in AI voice technology. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So, John, I think I'm coming to you first for this one.
Yeah, so here's what's interesting. I'm actually going to put this in the frame of our business. When you can take voice technology, and if you are in a multilingual consumer environment, and you're able to use voice technology to do accent neutralization, or even help with multiple languages, but you don't have to go all across the globe to find those. That's a pretty cool world to live in, because then I think from our business perspective, we can find markets where we know that the people that we bring in to support aren't just because we're trying to like notch in language assessments and requirements, but we're just finding individuals that are great at the job, and we can use voice technology to cover the rest. That's a future I'll sign up for.
Yeah, I'm blown away by the technology of the real-time translation as it's happening, and look at that will change certainly landscape of many of the different decisions that major global companies do today in driving their support to different parts of the world. This really eliminates or certainly reduces the need to do that. And then perhaps, I think going back to your other point, now it's where do I find the best source, the best agent to support the needs and the questions and become a subject matter expert, as opposed to these other nuances of accent neutralization or the level of English proficiency that they have as an internal skill. That's always been a challenge to our global recruiters, and they've been frustrated in that there are better equipped agents who don't score as well in their accent assessment or in their language assessment. Therefore, we don't utilize them, and they're probably the most equipped individual to support. So yeah, I think that's a major enhancement that we're just starting to see the elements of now.
Thanks.
Great.
All right, we are at our final trend number 11, and I think this is a great one to end up with. And for those of you who are still with us, excuse me, we will jump into a little Q&A. We've had a lot of great questions come in. We're going to talk about this final trend, and we'll get to your questions. Okay, guys, trend number 11. Companies are rethinking their tech stacks. Mike, I'll come to you for this one.
That's a pretty wide topic, but for sure, if I look at I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the progression from a company moving from an on-premise solution to a cloud solution, and the correlation was almost universally, the larger the organization and the global reach that they had, the less likely and nimble they were to make those types of moves. And I think we're going to see that same type of challenge here. New companies that are coming into our space and are first time companies hitting the marketplace. They'll take advantage of whatever is that latest and greatest technology, and they'll do it from day one. And
Yep.
so that allows them to be more nimble. It allows them to move faster, and it lowers their investment cost in infrastructure and potentially in some cases in people. So I think there's a natural. I think if you're looking at a company that has been providing this service for and some type of customer interaction for 50, 60, 70 plus years, they are embedded in some difficult and often challenging internal IT infrastructure challenges that aren't going to go away simply because new technology is there. So that's probably a juxtaposition that you'll see as this technology evolves.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it. This is where it's ripe for companies to come in and disrupt where they play. And Mike, that's a lot to your point. Whereas if you're building a company from ground up, your approach to this is going to be different than a company that's been operating in that area for 50, 60 years, right? And so I think it's going to be it'll be interesting to watch which organizations adopt this as this is our differentiator. We're going to own it and operate it and build it. And our tech stack is predicated on that. Where other organizations say, hey, this is an opportunity to relook at the entire thing. And where do we bring in best of breed partners or organizations to support us so we can update what we do? But gosh, I feel like we're always at this inflection point in periods of time. This is that inflection point where organizations are like, okay, now we got to relook at technology investments we made. Are we willing, like, who owns what? And I think it goes back to kind of where we're back full circle to what we've been talking about in this trend for the webinars is who's going to be the owner of this? Is it going to be the CX organization or is it an enterprise acquisition? Like, I don't think many of us have an answer to that yet. There's a lot that remains to be seen.
JT, you inspired another thought, and that is those companies that are, again, the mature global brands, have large legacy systems, are also the most risk adverse. So they're probably, again, now that's a generalization, but I think it's a somewhat founded one. They're the slower movers for multiple reasons, and one of which is risk. And what are the unknown risks that we have not yet uncovered in this space from a liability standpoint, from a delivery standpoint, from a control standpoint, and I think that will play into how we migrate moving forward.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. that brings us to the end of our list of 11 trends. We'll put them up here on the screen for you to take a look at one more time, but please don't log off yet, because as I mentioned earlier, we had some great questions come in. So guys, in the last couple of minutes here, I'm going to throw you about 4 or 5 questions. Try to keep your responses short so we can get to as many as possible.
Okay.
And go ahead and jump on into Q&A. All right, first question is, with AI, do you think self-service will take over voice and chat channels?
Lightning round. I'd say yes, it will. It will continually increase its percentage, but it will not go away as long as there are old people around like myself. So I still think it's a it's an evolution for sure.
Yeah, I think it's an and, right? Complementary. It's just going to be another peg into the puzzle, but like we talked about, there will be people who want to speak to a human being. That's just how I feel.
All right. All right. Next question. How will AI impact agent and CX performance metrics?
Improve. I think there's going to be improvement around the board because more data you have in the CX organization, more opportunity to coach, more opportunity to drive the right behaviors you want.
Yeah, and it's improved. It's also the recognition, the instant gratification. So I think you'll see a different type of interaction there and a different type of reward. What does that drive? It drives retention of your key assets.
So follow-on question is mine. Do you think that will change client expectations around performance?
Yes.
Oh, I think the bar is going to keep going up and up for sure. Yeah. And hopefully we lead that, right? Hopefully we, as I say, we outsourcers lead that as we have in the past, right? Often a first-time outsourcer sees an uplift once their partner begins to truly embed and understand and become subject matter experts. And I love that. I love that about our business. And I think the tools that we bring to the table as an industry will just continue to do that.
Yeah, and we could have a whole webinar on this topic, Barry, but I think what it does is it reduces the amount of KPIs to be focused on really meaningful ones that then are going to be the measurements, therefore raising the bar because you're really only focused on a couple key metrics.
Got it. Okay, next question. What effect will AI have on achieving true omni-channel CX?
Well, I think in some cases it is creating its own version of omni-channel. It's replacing elements of what we might consider to be a more traditional channel, because AI really is indifferent to the channel that it's using. The artificial intelligence can manifest itself in an IVR, in a chat, in an email, and of course in a live agent or agent assisted. So it's raising the bar for all, and it should continue to be independent of the channel itself, in my opinion.
I actually don't think consumers are all that complicated in their thinking, right? They're going to look at this interaction as just another piece to how they interact with the brands that they purchase from. So, if I go back to if you're buying from Target online or you're going into the store, you expect the same type of experience, and consumers don't split those up. We do because we're in this space, but a consumer, they don't.
All right, our final question, and it's a good one to end with. What's the best first step for a brand to get started with AI for CX?
I'll start, Mike. I think it is, and I think we do this exceedingly well here at ibex, is utilizing our team, which is focused on business intelligence, looking at complexity studies on where customers are coming in and interacting with you today, then how do you smartly plug in technology or AI into it to drive real outcomes versus just plugging in technology for technology's sake.
Yeah, I thought of this a bit earlier. when we talked about predictive AI, I think we'll get to the point where the predictive AI will be finding those bottlenecks in the process and helping us solve for them. But where do we start, right? We formally did that through an agent focus group. And guess what? Our agents knew exactly where the bottlenecks were in the process. They knew where we had deficiencies, where the knowledge base was incomplete or sometimes incorrect, and not afraid to share that. So I think, that's going to be an interesting evolution, as well as the live agent and the bots are almost competing to better and identify roadblocks and bottlenecks. But what a great place to start. I think, to your point, we do a great job here at doing wonderful discovery and uncovering where those challenges are before we ever take a phone call, an email, a chat, or some other interaction. And I think that's, part of a valued relationship.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Mike, John, thank you so much for your insights. I hope our audience appreciates the time you spent thinking about these trends. Thank you, our audience members, for tuning in to the top 11 trends for AI and CX for 2024. We'll send a recording of this webinar out to the audience members and to anyone who registered, and I hope to see you on the next ibex webinar. Have a great one.